Let's discuss expectations from the next government now, post the 16th of May. Well, we're talking about the road sector. We saw some big moves in the road stocks yesterday. The last NDA government put up the Golden Quadrilateral, which is the largest highway project in India and the 5th longest in the world. The question we're asking today, what can NDA 2 do for the Ailing road sector if they come to power on the 16th of May? To talk about that, we have three gentlemen who join us. KK Mohanty, the Managing Director of Gammon Infrastructure, Brijeshwar Singh, the former chairman of the NHAI, and Vibhor Singhal, an analyst at Phillip Capital, who tracks this entire space very closely. Gentlemen, morning to all of you. Mr. Mohanty, I'm going to start off with you because you have been, facing the brunt of the slowdown in this sector. What can NDA 2 really do for the road sector? Do you see a project like the Golden Quadrilateral being another one being put up to speed up road projects?
The first and foremost, the new government has to re-establish the confidence in the governance and decision-making process. That today, in my opinion, last 2.5 years, the process has been destroyed, and people lack confidence on the neutrality and transparency of the public sector agencies in delivering decisions as per the contractual agreements. Everybody is playing a game of safety first and not bothered about what is happening to the project or to the other party who is supposed to be, especially in a PPP sector. Public sector and private is supposed to be a partner. I take the opportunity to say this, that in the present structure, the structural defect is the private sector is a commercial organization. They bid some projects, they will lose some projects, they will earn some projects. For their mistake, they are losing. They should not be, in my opinion, bailed out anyway. But
that is the point, Mr. Mohanty. That is the point. You know, the private sector has also played a very nasty game in the last 5 years. Bid projects at unrealistic levels, probably banking either that land prices will bail them out, or that anyway, if you're in a financial mess, the government will bail you out, hoping perhaps to wriggle out of very difficult contracts. Anyway, the short point is, what will be the top 2 or 3 things you think should be set right?
First and foremost, the public sector bureaucracy has to be re-energized to deliver decisions faster. That is the first and foremost, has to be re-established into the whole system. The second is, especially you talk about road sector, there are 3 things which is causing concern today: land acquisition, forest clearance and environment clearance. If the public sector or the government can clear these hurdles before handing over a project to a private sector, 70% of the problem of the industry will get over. The second biggest problem today is, in last 2.5 years, the investor and banking sector has lost the confidence in the road sector. That needs to get there. There might be government has to play a very critical role through policies to re-establish and channelize funds into the road sector. And third, I again take this opportunity to highlight, the public sector cannot be a partner and sit on judgment on their own lapses. That's the flaw in the present structure, in a PPP structure.
Mr. Brijeshwar Singh, come in on that, sir. He's the former chairman of NHAI.
Good morning, sir.
Come in on these recommendations, these suggestions by Mr. Mohanty, and what do you expect from a stable government? If we're all assuming that it could be a stable NDA government, which has a fairly decent record for the road sector in its previous avatar, what do you think they should set right first?
Well, I think Mr. Mohanty has raised the question about the pre-construction role of NHAI, and I think that is very important. He's made all the right noises. Certainly, if NHAI takes up its pre-construction role very seriously, it gets the clearances, it gets the land, the construction rolls through rather rapidly. NHAI also has a very important post-construction role, which is overseeing the tolling. But I think the basic assumption we're making is that everything is going to be PPP. Now, what has happened is perhaps we're at an inflection point. PPP works very well if there's heavy traffic, but the roads on the network which have heavy traffic have probably already been taken up. There are not too many roads left which are suitable for PPP because they have heavy traffic. So we're going to see a lot more of EPC and annuity type projects, which I think is the way forward, and that's what the ministry has been arguing for. Secondly, I think the NDA manifesto, at least what the BJP has said, has taken up only 2 comments on roads. They want coastal highways and they want some strategic border roads. And these are the only 2 highways or kinds of highways they've specifically mentioned. They haven't talked about the mode of execution, and they haven't even talked about highways in areas affected by left-wing extremism or other strategic priorities. But if you take coastal highways and border highways as being the priority, these would have to be done on a non-PPP mode. They'd have to be EPC or annuity projects.
Mr. Singh, just to take that point forward, you know, in the last 1 or 2 years, the quantum of projects that were awarded by the NHAI was so paltry. I mean, in 2014, NHAI awarded only 1,400 kilometers of expressways versus about 6,000 kilometers that we saw way back in 2012. Do you think with the new government coming on board, at least this dry spell may come to an end?
Especially because, as you say, sir, if it has to be on an annuity EPC basis, the viability gap funding should largely come from a government which pretty much doesn't have too much in the till.
I think that is going to be the constraint. The government will have to pick the projects very carefully. And it's got an overall transport policy in the BJP manifesto. They're looking very much at railways rather than highways this time. They're talking about a diamond quadrilateral in railways. I'm certain the BJP, if they come to power, will try and finish the leftover jobs of the NDA, which is the east-west and north-south highways. But beyond that, the only declared intention is border roads and a coastal highway. So I think that going forward, whether the border roads and coastal highway, anything is ready by way of project reports, whether any land acquisition is taking place, I don't know. I very much doubt this. So in the declared priority areas, the new NDA government will be starting from scratch. Yes, if NHAI does a better job on the pre-construction activity, existing projects will go forward faster. And there is a shelf of projects with NHAI which they will bring onto the market as soon as they have the pre-construction firmly under control.
Let's get the analyst in on this as well, Vibhor Singhal, who tracks this space closely. Vibhor, hi, good morning. Mr. Mohanty laid down a few issues, you know, land acquisition, forest clearance, environment clearance. I wanted your views on what exactly can the new environment ministry do, or what do they need to do in order to address the depressed sentiment in the infrastructure sector?
I believe that in the road sector, I think the new government is probably well poised to capitalize on the revival. I think it's the easiest sector for which the government can revive on. Basically, you have a pipeline of around 25,000 kilometers. So on the environment front, as you asked me, basically what we need is a single window clearance. I mean, if there was an Accenture report which said that the Gujarat land acquisition model is probably the best in the country, if something like that can be implemented on a pan-India basis, on which the entire land acquisition and environmental clearance is streamlined and there is a single window clearance on that. We need to understand that the entire highway network in India is all brownfield. So it's not that we're building roads in no man's land. These are all brownfield projects. So we have existing 2-lane projects which are being widened to 4-lane or 6-lane. So you already have those roads. The land that is required to be acquired is not very high in terms of magnitude. So it shouldn't be a big problem as compared to, let's say, for a power project or any other mining project. So any systematic institutional body, we are talking of an NHAI regulator, if something like that comes up which provides a single window clearance for these environment, land acquisition and forest clearance, I think that will be a boom for the sector.
No, but Vibhor, what Mr. Singhal is, what Mr. Brijeshwar Singh is pointing out is that there isn't so much of capacity even in the industry to bid for PPP projects, that there are more likely to be therefore EPC and annuity kind of projects for which the government doesn't have much money. I mean, it's a government that's already committed on subsidies so much that there's so little for investment. What's your sense if that money is not there? Do you think the number of kilometers bid out will not be too much? Will that be a constraint for the road sector in the coming couple of years?
Honestly, I don't think so. I mean, if you look at the current pipeline, as I mentioned, out of the 25,000 kilometers which we are talking of to be awarded next 2-3 years, around 8,000 kilometers is in very advanced stages, which already have those land acquisition and clearances in place. Now, but what we need to understand is that over the last 2-3 years, if you see, a large part of the projects were awarded on BOT basis. Now, if I was an EPC player, and I was not getting irrigation orders from AP, I was not getting civil works from power projects, the real estate was a slowdown, so I was not getting any building construction orders. So the only way for me to grow my order book was to bid for these BOT NHAI projects. Now, I do not have core competency in traffic estimation and forecast. So basically, we had so many players jumping onto the bandwagon of BOT projects. Now what we have is we have a healthy pipeline of mix of BOT and EPC projects. So the pure EPC players will stick to the EPC segment. The BOT players will stick to the BOT segment. So you will have lesser competition. The bids will be more realistic. Banks will be more inclined to fund those projects, and you would actually have a much more sane level of bidding as well as construction activity in the sector overall.
So should I understand therefore that you are already moving in as an investment advisor to buy some of the road contractors because the natural cycle itself has improved?
Definitely, because actually if you look at the road sector, I mean we have a very tightly wound model concession agreement. We have a regulator who has given so many concessions to the developers and all. So the entire road model right now is very, very mature and developed. In fact, I would go on to say that you do not need somebody very strong at the center also in order to revive the sector. It is probably the lowest hanging fruit in the entire infrastructure space, and to revive that you just need a bit of a political goodwill, maybe a regulator which provides you a single window clearance, and road sector is probably the one segment which will probably see the revival much ahead of any other sectors in the infrastructure segment.
Mr. Mohanty, do you agree that there is a revival in place already, and also is there a need for a new road regulator, something that Chidambaram had mentioned in his interim budget?
To some extent, partially I agree with him, because the road sector worldwide, globally, is the first PPP sector which stabilizes everywhere. So this is the most easiest model in the PPP sector to establish. But one area where I try to highlight is, more than talking about new projects bidding and all, today large number of projects are languishing for startup or halfway through the way. So that will be the lowest hanging fruit to activate that and give a faster decision, so that those projects can get completed and the whole sector can get activated. So that's for sure. Third thing is what I mentioned in my opening remarks. You surely require a third party to arbitrate between two partners when there have been lapses on their own side. Suppose the contractor or concessionaire.
So the road regulator makes eminent sense.
Yes, they have to take a decision. Today, not only in road sector.
Mr. Singh, you would agree to that, Mr. Brijeshwar Singh, that a road regulator will solve a lot of problems?
Well, I think the question is that would the courts like a road regulator in place with the existing arbitration process or not? And what sort of person would be manning a road regulator, because you need people with domain experience and you need people with judicial bent of mind who can take a neutral stand. Such people are not very easy to find in the system, and not every regulator has done very well. One of the problems which would arise with the road regulator is you would have hearings on questions of tariff. At the moment, tariff increases are more or less automatic. But in the future, if you have a regulator, developers would be hit, concessionaires would be hit, and financiers would be hit, because you would never be certain what sort of tariff increase are you going to get. And we've had this problem in the power sector in a very big way. And I think a regulator which looks after the contract side but doesn't do the tariffs is probably what we want. But if you get a tariff included in the regulator's charge, you will get a lot of dilatory tariff clearances, and that's going to affect the viability of projects.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for your views. You're completely out of time. Thank you very much. So that's the low-hanging fruit, hopefully will be plucked.